Well, the deed has been done, and Zelda Tears of the Kingdom has already sold 10 million copies in just 3 days. Proving that Nintendo once again knows what they're doing, despite the weak arguments, the weak console, we need a next gen Switch, despite the 30 frames per second talk, despite all of that, they've showed everyone what it is to make a fun game and a game that maximizes what you can do on a console that's pretty old. But that leads to one more question for a lot of people. What is next for the Legend of Zelda series, and where will they go from here? What's good, y'all? It's Blue Satire, and again, this is another discussion board, and like always, this won't be that long. This is more focused on the conversation I want to have with y'all, and this is just my opinion, and I want to hear y'all opinions in the comment section. Let's see how you feel about this topic. What's next for the Legend of Zelda series? Let's get into that in a little bit, but please like and subscribe. I'm trying to get to this YouTube partner, trying to get to this 1,000 subscribers. And if you want more discussions and more things like this, please let me know what you want to hear about, and let's get into it. As we all know, The Legend of Zelda changed the formula drastically when it came to what a Zelda game could be, as well as Tears of the Kingdom and its predecessors. And a lot of people did love this game. Breath of the Wild is one of the highest rated games of all time, and then in turn, Tears of the Kingdom is the highest rated game for 2023, and one game that didn't disappoint. Now, there were a lot of haters, and I think that's just because they wanted to see that game fail because it was 30 frames per second or something like that. But a lot of people didn't resonate with Breath of the Wild because it wasn't like traditional Zelda. And that's the question I have for you today. Where does the Legend of Zelda series go now that Tears of the Kingdom is done and there's time to work on the next Zelda? Will it be in the same format, or will it go back to traditional? And what do you want? Well, Eiji Anonuma says that he finds the Ocarina of Time format a bit restricting, and now we'll continue with the Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom format as far as it goes with the future games. And to fully discuss what he said, here's a quote where he says, "With Ocarina of Time, I think it's correct to say that it did kind of create a format for a number of titles in the franchise that came after it. But in some ways, that was a little bit restricting for us. While we always aim to give the player freedoms of a certain kind, there were certain things that format didn't really afford in giving people freedom. Of course, the series continued to evolve after Ocarina of Time, but I think it's also fair to say now that we've arrived at Breath of the Wild and a new type of more open play and freedom that it affords. Yeah, I think it's correct to say that it has created a new kind of format for the series to proceed from. With that being said, it looks like the future of Zelda is probably going to go more toward that open world format. But honestly, me personally, I don't have a problem with that, because if we think about it, that's what the Legend of Zelda was from the beginning. It was always about exploring and exploration. And a lot of people who are on that traditional Zelda side, I think they're letting nostalgia get to them. Yes, Ocarina of Time is one of the greatest games of all time, but I don't think it's the best Zelda game, and a lot of people still say that. And the reason I say it's not the best Zelda game is because if it was, would we be celebrating games that came after it? It was the foundation to other things to come. As he said, it was the blueprint for a lot of games. But also, let's not act like games didn't evolve after Ocarina of Time. Every game had something new and different with the format. Yes, it kept that same dungeon, enter the dungeon, get an item so you can proceed format, but as he said, it kind of limits you in a way, and it's way more linear. And I think games these days are going forward to being less linear. And what game in Nintendo is best for a open world game? That's Zelda. That's literally Zelda. And again, like I said, you think about Majora's Mask, a lot of people was confused, didn't like the time concept, didn't like some of the things they introduced, but it ended up being a great of all time. It was a lot of people's favorite game. And then you go to Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker. That game introduced selling. A lot of people didn't like that. The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker introduced Link as a very expressive character. We could see how he was feeling even though he was silent. Like, that was one of his most expressive, if not the most expressive Link that we ever saw. But also that cel-shaded art style and the storytelling was great. But also it was different. The sailing on the wind and everything like that. A lot of things that were different. A lot of people did not like at first. And again, they celebrated. Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess was different. And you got to play as a wolf Link, and there were other things, but still traditional. You go to the DS games, they were all different. A lot of people still to these days sleep on those games because of what you had to do that was different. Like Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, like every game did something different. And then you come to Skyward Sword, which a lot of people had their qualms about that. You had to use the Wii motion sticks at first. And again, Zelda has always been a franchise that evolved over time and did something different. So I know folks say they want the traditional, but the thing about Zelda has always been about exploring. I believe Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild are the closest to the original vision of Legend of Zelda. If you go back to the first game and you go back to Link to the Past, those games were kind of open. Those were really some of the first open world games, period. So I think that that formula is what Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom was inspired by. Now that we have the hardware to do it, although, you know, we need stronger hardware in the future, I think that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is that formula that greatly shows what Zelda should be in the original ideal of that exploration and being free and exploring things on your own time. So for me, I love the approach of keeping this type of formula there. I know that story was something that people like. I think story should be more focused on. And I think that's why people say I miss that traditional Zelda, but let's be real. Ocarina of Time was good, but it was very straightforward. It was quick. It was cool. It was great for its time. And I think that we have to let that nostalgia go sometimes, because we can let nostalgia blind the future and change. Like, games won't get better. I remember people talking about The Legend of Zelda getting stale back then. I remember way before Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom came out, people were saying that the series was kind of getting stale with the same old formula. So when they change it up, it ends up being one of the greatest games of all time, and a game that's heavily compared to, and a game that every other game is measured to now. But it was needed. Breath of the Wild was needed, and Tears of the Kingdom perfects that formula and does more of what we thought wouldn't be possible. I think we need to stop letting nostalgia cloud our vision, but also make it seem like things are bad. Just because it doesn't play like what we love doesn't mean that the new thing is bad. But I also understand that we want to play some of that old stuff as well. So yeah, I would like to see maybe another team, or maybe some side games that still feel like that traditional Zelda, but I think that this is the formula that is needed as we go on with The Legend of Zelda. In my opinion, it's evolving. Nintendo always innovates and evolves, and The Legend of Zelda always innovates and evolves. So I can't agree that we need traditional Zelda back. I do love traditional Zelda, but as time goes on, we got to keep going towards the future when it comes to building up these games. And we can always go back and play those. I know we want original stories. We want to be able to have that formula of going in here. I need this item to proceed to the dungeon. I know people want different type of dungeons, but I think that this open way of exploring, this creates more gameplay. Ocarina of Time it wasn't really too much replay value. Some of those games, there aren't really a lot of replay value once you beat them. But Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, we are still finding new stuff to this day. But that's all from me. Let me know how you feel about that. Do you miss traditional Zelda? Do you think that the formula needs to go back to that? Or are you enjoying Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom? Do you believe that that's the formula that they should stick to? And why or why not? And all of this is my opinion. I want to hear your opinion in the comment section. All in all, I'm glad that Tears of the Kingdom is done well. 10 million copies is very good for a game for 3 days, when its predecessor sold 30 million in 6 years, 7 years. But again, like, comment, subscribe, and let me know how you feel about this. I appreciate y'all for watching. Y'all have a good one. Bye-bye.